The critical thing is the individual themselves and how they think about work, the lens through which they look at the world. And changing that, as we heard from the Department of Work and Pensions, is not the situation that matters, it's how people see it. And therefore, the heart of our approach to employee engagement needs to be about changing the mindsets of individuals. And that's predominantly what I want to talk about now. There's some fantastic research that shows that people who do the same things can think completely differently about it. That things are not as they are, the top line, things are as we see them, the bottom line. We know that optimists live longer, achieve more, are more popular, get elected faster, more likely to be leaders, and so on and so forth. We also know they're wrong more often. Bit of a dilemma there. I could be very happy, but very wrong. And we know that people work harder at things they're not paid for. In an experiment where people had to allocate Gary Larson cartoons into different piles based on themes, the group that was not paid to do it enjoyed it and spent longer doing it than the group that was paid. That was the only difference between it. We know, for example, that the employees with a sense of purpose work longer. That's no surprise there. But more interestingly, the full-time workers who are happiest with their work-life balance are the ones who work the longest hours. And that sounds bonkers. If you want to improve work-life balance, surely you change the hours or flexi time or so forth. But actually, those people are the self-employed. They work the longest hours, but they have a purpose, autonomy, and so on and so forth that makes them feel fantastic about their work-life balance. So things are not as they are as we see them. And therefore, if we want to build sustained employee engagement, it doesn't matter how many great campaigns we run or posters we provide or benefits or whatever else, unless we change the way that our people look at work. And sometimes it's about hiring people who have this mindset, and others it's about changing it within. And I want to just briefly share with you a bit more about what sits behind those mindsets that make a disproportionate impact on employee engagement. And the first is that of the flexible optimist. I don't know if any of you came to our Survivors Summit, where Richard Reed from Innocent spoke, and he talked about hiring people with yes in their heart. And it was kind of like basically saying, I want to hire optimists who feel autonomous. And if we wanted to increase employee engagement, the simplest thing we could do is just hire optimists. Because they will come to work feeling sunny and happy, and when things go wrong, they'll go, oh, well, it'll be all right, and I'll learn from it, and I'll turn downsides into upsides and so forth. So that kind of makes sense when we think about it. The question is, we've got the people we've got now. What could we do to change? Are people born optimists? Is that a fixed state of mind? Or is that something that can be adapted? One study got people, 3 groups of people. One said about the great things that had happened that day, wrote down 5 things at the end of each day, 5 great things that had happened, whether it's the sun shining or they went to the gym or whatever it was. The next group did 5 bad things that had happened that day. And the third group just wrote down 5 events that had happened that day. The first group not only were happier, but they took more exercise, they were healthier, and their life started to improve as a result. And that was simply by writing down 5 happy things, 5 good things that had happened that day. In a much bigger study, they took a group which is a particularly different, if you think of the hardest group you've got to change, this is like harder than any of them, I reckon. And it's teenagers who suffer from depression who have behavioral problems as a result. So that's like a really tough group of people to change. And what they did was they ran a 12-week program that, for argument's sake, I'm going to call optimism classes, but they weren't. They were like, how do you reframe situations, writing down 5 positive things, doing random acts of kindness, and a whole range of activities, mental activities like that. And that lasted for 12 weeks. And it's no surprise that at the end of that 12-week course, if you like, that those who'd been on it felt less depressed and that behavioral disorders went down versus those that hadn't. What's interesting is what happened after that. So they carried on going back and measuring for 30 months. And here's the graph. The red line represents the level of stress, the red bars, of those who did not go, and the blue is the levels of those that did go. And this is a pretty amazing, proper science, serious result. Those who didn't go, the control and interventions, you can see pretty similar. The post, there's a bit of a difference, but not a lot. 6 months, you think, oh my gosh, maybe the difference isn't going to work. But actually, the long-term pattern is incredibly powerful. So if we can turn people from being pessimists into optimists, that starts to have a 30-month, in this study, impact, not a 30-day impact. And therefore, the heart of sustainability is going to be helping people to start to see things differently. The next area where there's very significant research on impact is the sense of purpose. a sense of feeling that what I'm doing matters to me, to my organization, and to society at large. Again, the interesting thing here is back to, does it matter what job I'm doing in order to make a difference on this? And the study they conducted here was they asked people, to what extent do you think of what you do as a job, earn some money, buy the new greenhouse, whatever it happens to be, to what extent do you see it as a career? The next step on the ladder to go and progress and become the senior, whatever it is. And to what extent do you see it as a calling, making a big impact in people's lives or doing something that is more significant than what I can do? And the fascinating thing about this research was it made no difference what job someone did as to what they replied. Whether you were a hospital janitor or a doctor, whether you were a social worker or a banker, whether you were a lawyer or an accountant, whether you worked in America or India or the United Kingdom, the results were pretty much the same every way through. And the results were a third, a third, a third. So what that tells us is it's only so much we can do to recreate jobs and say, well, you know, I work for the World Wildlife Fund who's here. That's a fantastic organization with a great purpose. They can clearly get people to feel purpose. But someone else here is working for PricewaterhouseCoopers. Maybe that's harder to think of a purpose behind that. It's my organization that's the problem. A few giggles from a few people who may possibly be from PricewaterhouseCoopers or their competitors, all of whom are wonderful. And I think the issue here is that it's not the situation. It's not the environment. It's not the organization. It's not the industry you're in. It's about how we choose to look at it. And what's even more interesting about this is the difference in terms of need for more work-life balance, need for more my level of life satisfaction, and my level of job satisfaction. And between thinking of it as a job and as a career, there is no significant difference. The people who see it as just getting the money and the people who get next rung up the ladder have the same level of life satisfaction, the same level of job satisfaction, and there's statistically significant terms, the same level of need for improved work-life balance. But once you get to see it as a calling or a purpose, that changes. And here's the data. As you can see, in terms of work-life balance, the need goes down significantly. In terms of job and life satisfaction, it goes up significantly. So again, if we can change the way, the lens through which people are looking at their work, that gives them a big boost. Their life's getting better, job's getting better. It also gives us a big boost because we start to deliver sustainable employee engagement. Or just a brief thought about graduates. The research at the moment shows that today's graduates will do between 12 and 15 jobs by the time they're 38. 12 to 15 jobs. I mean, that's just, I can't even count that far. It's an enormous amount of jobs. And it means they're going to start looking for a new job before they got good at the current one. Every year they're going to start looking for something else, and it takes 9 months to a year to just get competent. So what is it that's going to change this sense of the peripatetic graduate who keeps moving on, which is not only probably not great for their life satisfaction, but it's terrible for our businesses because the cost of recruiting and replacing, as we know, is vast. And the answer, we started a research on this, and we'll be publishing more, and we're really interested in any research you've got on what keeps graduates to stay. But the last point is showing that what they're doing matters to their career, to their business, and to the world at large. So that's a big part of creating this sense of purpose. The next thing is, the next mindset that's so important, is the sense of feeling in control. This is a picture of King Canute, one of the most misunderstood people in history, because everyone thinks he thought he could stop the tide because he was the king. Actually, what happened is he felt powerless because all his courtiers told him he was so powerful he could stop the tide because he was king. And so he actually went out to prove them wrong. But it's that sense of what can we affect and what can't we affect. And those people, like the people who are self-employed, who feel they can affect their outcome and their work-life balance and their times and their ranges of their work life, will feel more engaged. Now, again, this is often a mindset. Yes, there are things we can remove. But when we look at empowerment and how that works, it's often about the relationship with the manager, certainly, but also about how individuals feel about when they can take a risk, when they can try something out, and what the consequences they feel will be if it doesn't work or it doesn't happen. So it's not just saying this is what it is how they feel about it. The fourth mindset that's absolutely critical is that we feel competent. And this is a study from the Center for Applied Positive Psychology, who we use in our Give Me Strengths workout, which is a strengths finder. What am I really good at that I know, my realized strengths? What am I really good at that I actually hadn't realized that I'm quite good at that, but that's actually one of my things that I'm strong at? What are the things that I've learnt to be good at, but actually I really don't enjoy. A friend of mine says his son really doesn't like rugby, but he's really good at rugby. And that's the kind of the learned behavior. I've learned to do this. My dad used to play rugby. My brother plays rugby. I've become good at it. But we have these learned behaviors in our organizations or our roles, things we think we should be good at. And sometimes we think we're not very good at stock control, or we're not very good at budgeting, but we think we have to get good at that, and we're seen as good at it, but we're not. I mean, the things we're actually weak at. And the vital thing for engaged employees is that we feel that we're competent and we're good at what we're doing, which is partly about building skills and all the good work that many people do here on skills development. But it's also about shaping my job and my work so that I can do things that I'm really strong at. So competence is the fourth of the 5 mindsets. And the 5th one is resilience. There's so much to say about this, but I'm not even going to begin to try and cover the full area of resilience, except that we know that a lot of it is about how we choose to frame and look at problems. And therefore, if we can help people frame and look at difficulties, such as the Department of Work and Pensions and the challenges we're going through. We did a big project with Currys, where 40% of the jobs were removed over 2 years in the logistics division, almost all of whom were not graduates, were school leavers who joined for life. And we managed through a series of interventions by helping them become more resilient and focus on what they could affect. We reduced employee attrition. We also got customer service the best it had been for 21 years, despite the fact they were taking out all these roles. And there's a great myth that just because jobs are being lost, everyone has to be disengaged, and customer service will get worse and costs will go where they do. Actually, we can change mindsets so people feel much more capable and much more energized by it. This is a chance for me to go out and be a cook, one of them said. I've always wanted to be a chef. This is my chance to get the training. I've got 2 years to practice my skills, learn about the market before I go off and do it, and find a local premises and use my redundancy payments to put the deposit down on the sandwich shop, restaurant-y type thing, and move ahead with that. So this is a fantastic way of helping people build resilience, because the shocks will come, the change will not stop. Things will probably get harder and tougher and so forth. So building that resilience is vital.